Welcome everybody. This is, I think, episode 6 of Tom and Dave. Our counting is not great as far as episode numbers, but we have our first guest in program history today. I want to welcome Giancarlo Navas from the Heat Beat to the Tom and Dave show. Thank you for taking the time to do this with us today, Giancarlo. How are you?
I'm doing great. Listen, I'm excited to be the first guest. This is fun. I love that. Our first listen, and you're having a guest in episode 6. We did Heat Beat for 4 years before we had a guest.
Wow.
So we I told you pre-show we were just scared to ask people.
Yeah.
It's good that you got to put yourself out there. I'm really excited.
Thanks, man. So we just wanted to get right into it. Let's talk Max Strus for the people. How real should he be to me as someone who is not a Heat fan?
Okay, so I love the story of Max Strus as a story of two games, right? So the first game that they played in the preseason against Pelicans, Max Strus looked like the goofiest dude on the court. He was running around all over the place. He was shooting awkwardly. He was not shy at all. We have a writer for Miami Heat, but also writes for Basketball News, Nikias Duncan at Nikias NBA. Probably one of the smartest people, probably one of the 5 smartest people writing about basketball today, along with Chris Terry and Zach Lowe. Nikias called him at halftime maybe the worst basketball player he had ever seen. Since then, he's been on a Hall of Fame trajectory. I don't even know what else to call it. I mean, the dude is going crazy, shooting off the dribble, shooting off the catch, always relocating. He's like German Duncan Robinson. So I warn people about a good preseason game because it's not even like a good preseason, right? It's like a good game of preseason. Same with KZ Okpala, but and I said this today, like Heat fans will remember preseason Rodney Magruder and preseason Gerald Green are first ballot Hall of Fame players. So let's not take too much into preseason. What I can say about Strus is that if they are gutted for a trade for a particular superstar who will not be named, you kind of hope that they're set up so that they have, assets to replenish. If they send out 5 rotation players, they're going to need a dude to run around and shoot. And they might have had that.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the thing that impressed me the most with Strus in the second game, even if the, shooting doesn't hold up as we go into the regular season, he wasn't really afraid. He was, I think, for the most part in the second game, running the right routes, always in the right position, making the best of his opportunities. And I think for like a guy on a two-way contract, that's really the best you should really expect from him. And yeah, I was happy to see that because I really didn't know that much about him. I know that the training camp, in training camp, Spo and them were talking. His name was coming up a lot as someone who was really impressing them, and yeah, I think all of us were just a little surprised to see him like be one of the first bench guys in the first game, before so many other like Exhibit 10 and two-way guys.
So he's interesting in the sense of like Eric Spoelstra teams, especially post LeBron. I think especially post LeBron, he has a shift, right? So they ran a lot of stationary pick and roll with guards screening for bigs. That was kind of like the big 3 thing. And that's kind of was the fulcrum of Eric's offense, and a lot of elbow stuff with Chris Bosh that we see now with Bam, and we see the guard screen for bigs and everything. The big thing now is what I call Eric Spoelstra's revolving door of handoffs, where they just have a bunch of ball screeners and dribble handoffs and guys moving all over the place. Now we saw that with Wayne Ellington a couple of years ago, and Wayne had at the time the best shooting season in Miami Heat history. He was launching like 9 threes a game and shooting like damn near 42% or something. It was something ridiculous. And I remember, I don't know if it was Forbes or who did a story on like his percentage on contested threes was like an astronomically historical rate, because he's just like Eric just had to move in and dive in and moving all over the place. Now we see the second coming of that with Duncan, and a lot better. Duncan's a lot taller, as just a quicker release as Wayne, and he's just a nonstop mover, which I will always say, David Thorpe, Coach Thorpe, who does a lot in the NBA and does a lot of developmental coaching, says that, we used to teach players to run routes like JJ Redick. And now we're like, whoa, we're going to teach Duncan Robinson routes and how he controls his body. So like already 1 year in the league, he's changing everything. So we kind of fast forward to Strus, perfect mold of what Eric Spoelstra like shooters should be. Always moving, always relocating, screening, sprinting hard, cutting back, coming at a pistol, screening for pistol, right? All that like fun stuff that SPO teams love to do. And when a guy like that is coming off the handoff, when it's Bam or if it's Precious now, triggering, and you have a guy who's a good passer and a good roll guy, You're creating a ton of space with that movement, like artificially, right? They create artificial space. So I like what I see what they see in him as a guy who can shoot off the move. And I think that more than anything, it's just like that kind of mold of player. And that's not going to be the last one we see. They love those guys.
Sure. So would you say he's of that like young crop of players that he got this year, would he be the one that impressed you the most in that two game preseason run? Obviously it's a limited sample size, but
that's an interesting question. Cause like when I look at the Heat, I think, okay, well, out goes Jay Crowder, right? Who was obviously huge for them. Not like Jay Crowder is like, this irreplaceable fulcrum of your offense and defense, right? But like Jay Crowder was very uniquely what they needed. A guy who can play small ball 4 and can guard up, right? So like when they bring in Mo Harkless, who shaky jump shot, just like Jay, although Jay shot the lights out here. Harkless has a shaky jump shot, is a bit quicker than Jay Crowder. So I think in theory, Miami's not a really good team at defending threes, and they didn't really limit a lot of threes. Part of that was just like, Duncan Robinson's closing out, right? That last help guy or whatever. It's Jay Crowder who's not really quick, right? Whatever. Yeah. Now you have a guy like Mo Harkless, who I think in theory is a little quicker, can kind of close out on guys faster, but can't guard up, right? So when they're going to play the Giannis's, the Kevin Durant's, those kind of big wings, they don't have a guy like Jay Crowder that is strong and can kind of hold ground. So to me, going into the season, that's like the thing I'm looking at is like, okay, well, how can they not get exploited at that 4 spot, right? So KZ Okpala, in theory, fixes their issues, right? It's a big dude, really long, athletic, quick, strong, and given what we saw in the preseason, won't hurt your offense. Which is a big thing here, right? Because like you can find a dude like Rondé Hollis Jefferson, to play some 4 minutes and to defend, right? But I mean, what is Rondé doing for you in offense, right? So you gotta have that kind of push pull there. So in terms of what they need, I think for sure it's what KZ gave them. And like I was getting made fun of in some NBA group chats. I was getting made fun of by the blue check marks saying, what are you talking about this KZ Okpala who was really awful in the G League last year? Mo Harkless is a rotation player for many years on good playoff teams. I know that. I saw it. But Mo Harkless looks slow as hell. And I'm a big Mo Harkless fan. But I think their high end is going to depend on what KZ can bring them. Miami has like this weird situation where they just have a lot of players who are really like adequate, right? So like I have this 11-man rotation in my head that I think is going to make it tough for like other people to kind of break in. You have Tyler, Goran, Duncan, Avery Bradley, Jimmy Butler, Andre Iguodala, Harkless, KZ, Bam, Precious, and Kelly Olynyk. That's 11. Then you have Nunn, Strus, and Myers Leonard on the outside. And then you have that kind of the Udonis Haslem, Chris Silva, Gabe Vincent, right? Kind of other guys that fill out your team. I think of those 3 guys, I think Nunn is the most likely to get minutes because, Goran's probably going to rest. The guard situation, you never know if Tyler gets hurt, who was hurt last year. So I think Nunn is a guy that could see. Strus, I don't know how much playing time he'll get this season if there's no trade and they kind of hold still. So like to me, I don't know, like I don't know how you guys feel about that, but like for me, that's kind of where I'm at with their rotation.
No, I mean, I think Dave could probably speak to it better than I could, but that seems like a perfectly logical way for it to work out. I mean, the nice thing with Myers Leonard is even if you're not playing him, he's going to be an all-time bench flexer. Dave and I talked about this a lot last playoffs. He was animated on the sidelines. And
always on the bike. Led the league in being on the bike.
Yeah, I think the guy I am like most curious about right now, besides like the young guys who I'm really excited about and like the guys I expect to be good, is definitely Nunn. Because if Nunn can return to the level of like, pick and roll creation that he was doing at the beginning of last year when he was still shooting efficiently and everything and like could hit those nice like mid-range shots, I think that would be so huge for our bench scoring. But even in the preseason, I feel like his shot looked the same as it did in the bubble, where it was something really flat about it. A lot of them were coming off short. Just kind of looks like he's lost a bit of athleticism and like quickness just from a year ago. And I know he went through a lot, so it's understandable. But a return to good Kendrick Nunn, I think, raises the floor of the Heat a little bit, especially on their bench side. Just because, with the guards off the bench, like I don't think we're counting on Bradley to be a great scorer off the bench or anything. We obviously have Goran. I do worry about he's getting older. He played some of the best basketball of his life just a couple months ago, but then got that bad injury. Um, I do worry a little bit about his age finally catching up to him a little bit. But yeah, I think that rotation makes sense. I think we all are excited about Precious after that second game. Um, but I am curious kind of where he fits. I know there's kind of a natural spot in that backup four, backup five section where he can play a lot of minutes. But I feel like I still don't even completely understand what he's good at. So I think that's sort of my main question with him.
So like for me, you kind of saw it a little bit in preseason. Offensively, he's a 5, right? They have him screening, they have him diving, and cutting. Defensively, he's more of a 4. He's a 6'9" guy who has a 7'1" wingspan, not dissimilar to Bam. Is very NBA ready in terms of athleticism and body and strength. Like he looks like he's going to contribute right from the jump. What I thought was interesting, so like kind of before we saw him play in preseason, I was wondering if, do the Heat see him as like a Jeremy Grant type of kind of defender player, kind of does a little bit off the dribble. Eventually he can kind of, his jump shot's not bad looking. But really from the jump, they're like, no, you're going to play center. You're going to screen, you're going to dive, you're going to offensive rebound, you're going to crash the glass. They use him as Bam and handoffs too. I mean, the same kinds of stuff. He catches the ball at the top of the key, take 2 dribbles, and then trigger from the other side, right? Where a shooter, either Tyler or Duncan, comes off to kind of take that handoff and then run action. So they're using him like Bam. I mean, they're like, okay, you're going to screen, do all that stuff. Defensively, he can do both. I thought what was interesting was Eric was playing kind of some Kelly plus Precious and Kelly plus Bam again. So like last season, I think they played Bam and Kelly played like 400 minutes or something very small. Like it was like negligible sample. When the year prior to that, they played a lot of like 2 big kind of Kelly Bam. So that tells me a couple things. One, Myers is probably on the outside looking in. 2, they might want to go 2 bigs in terms of Precious and KO, or KO and Bam for a lot of stretch, then have KO be the 5 defensively. And then you have Precious kind of off ball roaming and helping, as opposed to him being the drop man. They did a lot of drop scheme in the preseason. I don't know how much to take from that. I that's another big question of mine. Like in the playoffs, they really switched to no pun intended. They really switched to doing a lot of switching and everything off ball stuff, everything, right? Everything's a switch. Now they're like dropping again, which I think is probably better for the grind of the regular season. I imagine late in games or like against, probably tested against certain matchups, how they feel Precious switching on to quicker guards or whatever. But I think that's going to be Precious's role, kind of a 4 defensively, sometimes 5 defensively, depending on the matchup, and then a 5 on offense. Until he has a reliable, at least minimum corner 3, I don't really see them kind of using him more than that on offense.
Yeah. It kind of seemed like that, especially with the way he was getting his points. I felt like we're almost always on rolls or just some cut. Like it was always like in a flow of the offense way that didn't really look like he had much ways to create for himself. Although we did see him hit that one like nice kind of off balance jumper, which makes me optimistic that he has more in his bag. But yeah, I think. Yeah, I noticed those handoffs and everything, and I think the a big weakness I remember from last playoffs that I think a lot of Heat fans were kind of frustrated about is once Bam's out, like who's getting a rebound, who's like boxing people out in the paint because Kelly isn't a great presence down there. Myers isn't a great presence down there, and I think Precious has already shown some shown to be a big upgrade in that regard already.
Like I feel like the rebounding stuff is so overstated with last year's group. It was never an issue until your damn starting center got hurt, who's gonna eat up almost 40 minutes in those big games, right? It's not like Bam's playing 30 minutes. It's not like, you got to preserve him. It's not like he's like Joel Embiid that he's going to get tired and you got to be careful. No, I mean, like they were out rebounded every game, but it wasn't by a ton. I mean, in game 3 where they won, they were only out rebounded by 6, which is not bad. And I don't even think the Lakers, killed them on the defensive glass. It was 32-34. Miami out defensive rebounded them, right? It was just a couple of those, and a lot of those were off threes, right? And I think that we do the math differently. Those long rebounds on threes are kind of random, right? So that kind of like 4 rebound difference negligible. They corrected that game 1 and game 2 was startling. And I think they were still trying to adjust, and they were playing Andre Iguodala at the 4. Come on, and sometimes the 5. Like they were riding with the Andre and Jay Crowder front court. So yeah, you're gonna get killed on the glass, like But when Bam is your center, and then either Precious or Kelly is like playing those kind of backup minutes, you'll patch enough rebounding together. Yeah. And also another thing, Jimmy's a really good rebounder.
Yeah.
And, Jimmy doing all that stuff on offense, obviously his rebounding was there because he was getting the triple doubles, but kind of that petered out by the end because like that dude had nothing left in his leg. So you have to also remember, in a world where Jimmy doesn't have to do literally every single thing on a basketball court, that's not going to be too much of an issue. So I'm not as concerned about the rebounding stuff. I do like that they have another guy to throw as a wing defender, especially with Jake Crowder gone. I think that if he can develop a corner 3 by the end of the year, at least a 33% corner 3-point shot, so he can reliably play with Bam and Jimmy, because you just can't have 3 guys that can't shoot on the court. It's just too much for your spacing. And they can throw out lineups of like Jimmy, Bam, Precious, plus Duncan, plus other shooter, whether that be Tyler or they want to go more defense, Avery Bradley. I really like your chances against like the Nets, especially with KD and all that, and Giannis, and kind of recreating that stuff.
Yeah, that's a great point. That actually is a good lead up into the next question we wanted to talk about, and that's which team in the East do you think is Heat's toughest matchup this year?
Ooh. I mean, so I have 2. Well, I mean, the Nets are kind of an unknown quantity, right? So it's hard for me to say how the Nets are going to match up with Miami, because I guess in theory, we don't really even know the system of offense they're going to play. It's Nash's first year as a head coach. I know D'Antoni's there as an advisor, but I imagine, Durant teams tend to be, isolation heavy, and, he's really good at it. There's not much they're going to be able to do, especially with a guy like Harkless, who I just don't think is going to be able to guard him at all. It's like not even like, at least Jay, you trust him to push him off his spot and kind of, rough him up a little bit. But Harkless that's just not a good matchup. You kind of hope KZ is going to be ready for that. That's a matchup where Bam might have to guard him a lot, and you just kind of let, whatever big man they have, do, whether that be DeAndre or Jared Allen, right? You just kind of hide maybe Mo Harkless or, whatever power forward you have in that matchup. But that's tough for Bam too, right? Because now, you have Bam full time on Kevin Durant. So, you don't want that either. And then there's obviously Miami's biggest issue last year was kind of quick guards. They corrected a lot of that in the playoffs against Boston, right? I was scared of Kemba Walker. Kemba Walker terrified me. Miami, he would kill their drop scheme like hell, right? And anybody who could shoot off that pull up is going to eviscerate, right? Because like Kendrick Nunn and Goran are just like, they die on picks. So they're going to be late every time. And then Bam has to choose between the basket and stepping up. And then that's just not a favorable position. So a guy who can come off that screen, pull up from 3, it's just really tough for your offense. They managed to contain that by switching and sending a lot of help. And they're like, Marcus Smart is going to shoot a lot of 3s, and we're going to be okay with that. The Nets, that might not be so easy, because if they run Kyrie and Durant pick and roll, now you have 2 guys who are weaknesses for you right now at the 4 and at the 1 defensively. And I don't think you want to play a lot of Avery Bradley in the playoffs. So that's a matchup that worries me, but I have to see more about it. Yeah. I think theoretically their 2 best players kind of attack what they're not good at. I don't like that Boston matchup still. I know that Miami won last, but it's hard to score. And if Bam doesn't take the leap as a scorer, that I hope he does, that becomes a lot tougher. And I think you saw when Bam took initiative, not just as a roll man, but as a guy to kind of create off the step, it changed their offense a lot. I'm not really that scared of the Bucks. I'm not gonna lie. I think the Raptors are kind of a pain in their ass because the Raptors are very unique that they can switch their favorite pet plays, right? So that Duncan Bam dribble handoff. Last season they were switching that with OG Anunoby, kind of making Duncan's life a living hell, which was just not very fun. You saw in that bubble game. So those are kind of but Toronto's not gonna really be a contender next season unless they kind of make a trade for somebody. I think that they're gonna be in that kind of 4, 5, 6 range, right? And I think they'll be a pain, but I think Miami will be able to limit their half court offense enough to it not be an issue. So it's like the Nets, the Celtics, right? Those are the kind of teams I'm worried about. And the Bucks. Listen, until Mike Budenholzer proves to me that he can make significant adjustments in the playoffs, I'm not scared. I'm not scared of Lopez drop 10 feet in the paint. I'm just not.
I don't blame you.
Sorry. They're great. They're great. He's a good coach. I'm just, Miami eviscerated them on offense, like eviscerated them, shredded them. And Miami was like a good offensive team, but like not that good.
Not good. So actually, the 4 position has come up a lot as we've been on this call. We talked about the rebounding or overblown rebounding concerns. If it isn't either, those backup 4 minutes or the rebounding, what's the thing you kind of look at on this Heat team and makes you sweat a bit? Like, what is the thing you could see being the undoing for Miami, if anything's going to present that kind of problem?
I still think I have questions about their guards being able to contain, right? So, other than the 4, like, can Tyler and Dragic and Duncan really stay in front of guys, right? And I know Duncan's not really defending a lot of guards. They usually kind of have Jimmy do that assignment if they're sharing the court together. But in general, like their point guards, can they stay in front of people, right? Like Trae Young absolutely lit them up, and Trae Young's gonna light up everybody. And that was a game that they really brought out the Bam switch. That was one of the first games that they're like, okay, Bam, please fix this. And then Trae was pulling up from the logo, and then Bam just kind of throws his hands up like, well, okay, what am I supposed to do?
Like, how much can I switch at the point?
Yeah, like, you switch, and what are you going to do? You can't press up on the guy at the logo, right? He's fast. So I have questions about their guards, and I have questions if they're going to be able to defend. I think it's unfortunate that Kemba has the knee problems, and we don't know his health situation. And that's a huge blow to the Celtics, especially any matchup with the Heat. Drew Holiday is not like a really speedy guard, but he is a very good pick and roll creator. So I worry about his size in that kind of bothering Tyler and Goran and Nunn and all that, even Avery Bradley to an extent, which is why I think that they were so adamant on bringing him in because he was like, the second signing or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
That was an issue. Their point of attack defense was an issue, and they never corrected that. And they made the finals in spite of that. Just one of the most amazing things I've ever seen in my life. They just completely made their biggest weakness not exist. It was crazy. And I can't even say it was matchup stuff because, like, the damn Celtics were the team I was scared of for that reason. The Raptors would have been an issue, too, with Kyle and Fred, but they're not so much speed as they are kind of strength and craft. So I think they would have managed a little better, but still, that's the thing I look at. And they haven't really told me how they fix that. It's like, and by the way, I'm really high on this team. It sounds like I'm like picking them apart. I really think that they're like at minimum Eastern Conference Finals or bust. Like, I think they're that good. I just think every team's going to have their weaknesses. And I just think these Miami's are very clearly laid out. I think their young guys are kind of like vetish, right? Like you know what you're going to get from their young guys. And then like kind of the new guys, you kind of know what you're going to get from everybody, which is good and bad in this case. So those are the things I'm most concerned with.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Definitely concerned about those two. That also kind of ties in to this thing that Tom and I have been doing in our season previews where we keep talking about like how many guys do we like trust on all these teams. And, obviously it's kind of like an intangible thing to talk about and to quantify in any way. But I feel like it can be like a nice barometer of how good you think a team might be by just thinking about who are we trusting in the in a playoff 8-man rotation or 9-man rotation. And I guess I just want to propose that to you on the Heat. Like, at what point in the rotation does it kind of fall off a little bit and you get a little bit worried?
So they have guys like it, and like I think every kind of Heat analyst will give you a different answer on this because, like, for example, I was somebody that trusted Olynyk. Mm-hmm. Right. And I thought he played well in the finals. And clearly a lot of people didn't. And Eric Spoelstra just kind of hooked him after a certain point, even though I thought he was playing well. So,
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think Kelly offers a lot on offense. If he's in the right situation, like he can, I mean, he scored what, like 20 points in a finals game? Like that was huge.
good.
Yeah.
He's cutting, he's
Yeah.
slipping, he's faking, he's flaring, he's doing all this weird, dumb movement with this little Kelly keeper thing. Like he's a bunch of nonsense. He's like nonsense, the player. It's just nonsense. None of it should work, and it all just kind of works. I love it. So, kind of looking at their guys that I think you trust and the coaching staff trust. You have Tyler and Goran; those guys are trusted. Duncan's trusted. Jimmy's trusted. Andre's trusted for better or for worse. Bam is trusted, right? So you have those guys. That leaves you with the other 11. You have Precious, Olynyk, Harkless, and Avery Bradley, right? We don't know how coach staff's going to, and KZ. We don't know how they're going to feel about that. And then you have Nunn, Struss, and Myers, who I don't think any of those have earned Eric Spoelstra's trust. So, I don't know what your 5-man rotation is in a big game, right? Because I think that 4 spot's the biggest question. I think that Tyler's on the floor. I think that Jimmy's on the floor, and I think that Bam's on the floor. I used to think that Duncan was going to always be on the floor, but Duncan didn't close a lot of games last season in the playoffs. Yeah. Against the Celtics, he didn't close a lot of games, and against the Bucks, he didn't close a lot of games. They went Jay Crowder and sometimes Andre or whatever, and kind of by committee. They have 3 guys now that I think are going to be on the floor. Maybe Dragic, right? So you go Dragic, Tyler, Jimmy, Bam, plus whoever's the 4. But we don't know that question yet. And then 2 of those guys are minus defenders. That's the other part of this that we have to also remember. So stunned that they survived switching, but every time they switch, they would just send a bunch of help Goran's way. Help Goran! It's on an island. So that they have one position that's a huge question mark. I think the rest is going to be similar to last season. Because I used to be Jay, and then that was it. Like, okay, this is what we're writing with. These guys, these 5, and then Goran might be sub for Duncan or whatever, depending on the match.
Yeah, I think going into this preseason and this season, I was definitely worried about losing Jay in that sense of we did kind of have a more concrete understanding of who was going to close those games. But I think it's okay that, Spo, I think, is good at kind of using a lot of the regular season to kind of experiment with different things and like kind of figuring out what is going to end up working. I feel like a lot of Heat seasons, post LeBron Heat seasons especially, are kind of like, Spo takes a little while to figure out the groove. And then
tinkering. Tinker.
Yeah, he tinkers a lot. And I think this team will have a lot of tinkering, especially because of how many of these new young guys I think are kind of unknown commodities, and we're not sure how much they're going to play. But a guy like KZ, for example, is just really intriguing because they obviously have a lot of trust in him already. They, I like this new thing that I think, some franchises are doing. Definitely the Heat, the Raptors are kind of doing, where they have this one, like these prospects that they really like, they think have a lot of potential, but they know they're not making the rotation this year. And they do actually use the G League as like a good, like real developmental year for them. And all these guys always look better. Duncan looks so much better after doing that. KZ looks better in these 2 preseason games than he did in the few games he played last year. And I think if you
go back to Hassan, Tyler Johnson. They've been doing this for a while.
Yeah. So I kind of lost my train of thought there, but I think
the G League is so helpful for them in a lot of ways, and them and Toronto have been kind of the Spurs too have been really, really good with that. They've been knocking it out of the park.
Oh yeah. So I guess
no.
One other question we had, I think we don't have too much more on our list, but where do you think they finish in the East, at least regular season wise this year? I know you've said Eastern Conference Finals or bust for this team. If you were to make a regular season pick, what would you say it would be?
I've said anywhere between 3rd and 4th. I don't think they drop below 4th. I think it's 3rd. I see people having them at 2nd. I just don't see them as like this great regular season team. I don't know. I I think there's a lot of weird matchups. Like I think, for example, Washington is going to be a pain in their ass. I think like Washington's going to like maybe win 3 or 4 games, and it's like people are going to be freaked out. And it's just like I don't know. That's just like that. This is the kind of shit that's going to happen to them. I think the Hawks are going to be like a really. I'm sorry, I cursed. I don't know if I was allowed to or not. Hawks are going to be a pain in it. I never know. I never ask, and like I'm always proud of myself when I don't curse on radio because I was like, okay, I keep it like in my mind when I'm on pods, I think third is like a fair place for them to finish. I think Milwaukee 1. I had Boston at 2, and everyone yelled at me because of Kemba's health. I think the Nets could be third, could be second. That depends. I also don't think the Raptors are going to be like a bad regular season team. I mean, they only lost their 5th and 6th best player. Or 4th and 5th. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's not they're not going to drop 17 games in the standings. They were damn 60-win team last season. Like,
yeah, no, like we talked about it on our show. Like, they just have a ton of dudes that know how to win a regular season game. Like, just night in, night out. They will show up.
Like, and Baines is a good basketball player. Like, he's no Gasol, right? Like, he's not going to be a guy that when their offense breaks down, they throw it to him and they say, please help us, with 5 or 7 seconds left in the shot clock. Yeah. But, I mean, he's a reliable shooter, takes up space, is a decent drop big, not a great defender, but whatever. Good rebounder, good outlet passer, like, good enough. Yeah. Like, if you have to
do a lot worse than Baines.
Listen, if you had to construct a discount bin Marc Gasol, right? Like a dollar store Marc Gasol, right? You would probably like the machine would spit out Aaron Baines.
Yeah.
You kind of hope Chris Boucher. Listen, I'm kind of a Raptors fan too, so like I'm glad I can talk Raptors. You kind of hope that Chris Boucher kind of steps up and fills that role next. But I mean, they're going to be a really good team. Yeah. The East is going to be, I think, probably like between like 2 and like 6. It's going to be like a 4 or 5 game differential. Not that different from last season.
Yeah, I could definitely see it. I think neither of us had the Heat below 4. I want to say. I think I had them 3. Dave had them 4.
Yeah,
Dave, we're scarred as Heat fans. We're scarred.
Yeah, no,
we know how this works.
Yeah, no, that was my thought process on this. Was just like I've never like the post LeBron Heat teams have never been like these amazing regular season teams, even when they are are able to turn it on in the playoffs. Like
So when they were the 3 seed that year in 2016, that was like a 4-way tiebreaker that was incredibly complicated and came down to like who had the most Sagittariuses on their team or something. Like it was so weird the tiebreak that they won that they could have been 6, but they were 3rd. It's just like, okay, we take it.
So yeah, I don't think we have that much, but to kind of end this on a good like positive note, or actually 2 more things, but 2 positive notes. What do you want to see from Bam this year in terms of improvement, in terms of how he can make that sort of leap, that next leap? Or do you think he's going to kind of be at this current level for a bit and then we'll see a leap, maybe in a year or 2?
I have said for a long time that I want Bam to do the Amari Stoudemire thing. I want Bam to face up 12 feet from the basket and look his defender in the eye and say, I'm so much stronger and faster than you, and then knock them over. Not unlike what he did to Daniel Tice. He's a beast. He's so quick. He's so good. He's so crafty. You saw in that Celtics series, got game 6. He looked at Daniel Tice and he's like, "You're not fucking guarding me. Like, I don't care who you are. Like, I'm gonna send your ass to the bench, and they're gonna try one of the 7 Williams that are there, and none of them can guard me either." And then when the help comes from the corner, guess what? I can wrap around, pass off the dribble because I'm that fucking good. So I want that. Like I want that. Like he needs to take a leap as a scorer. And I don't know if that's going to come early on. I don't know if it's going to be like Jason Tatum where somewhere in the middle of the season, like everything clicks. He's going to be like Zach Galifianakis in The Hangover where all the numbers are in front of him. And he's going to, achieve the matrix and achieve his his final form. He's going to have a DBZ transformation into whatever the Hall of Fame, Cyclops he's going to be. He has that kind of potential. He's that damn good. He's like that athletic of a freak on defense. I mean, I think that the progression is going to be steady. I think that, he's already a defensive player of the year candidate. I think that if the Heat defense is better, and that's kind of a stupid thing to say, right? Like their defense was, I think 12th or something last year. Right. And that's obviously not going to get you in the deep way conversation, but like if their defense was like 4th or something, right? He gets in the conversation. And that's just like your guard's not being awful in pick and roll. It's just such a stupid way that we do awards, but that's like neither here nor there. But like, if they can improve the defense, he'll probably like be in consideration for those awards. And on offense, it's just kind of take initiative as a scorer. Right? I think it's really cute when you do all that handoff stuff, and that's great for like the utilitarian offense and like this, kumbaya. Everyone touches the ball, and we're moving and we're grooving, right? And it's great, and we love it, and it's awesome. But in the playoffs, as we've seen, all of a sudden when teams decide, we're switching that, and you can't do that anymore. And then you gotta start soul searching for answers. And I think another thing that he can improve on is his post ups. He's like really bad post up player. And when you get, if they're gonna switch that Tyler and Bam handoff, they're gonna switch that Duncan Bam handoff, and you get Norman Powell on you or whatever, and you're not posting that guy up, like that's an issue, right? Like you can't let like Powell guard you or like like these smaller Celtic players, like you can't like you gotta punish that, because you're hurting your teammates by not doing that. And you're hurting your offense. And all of a sudden, there's 11 seconds left on the shot clock. And then you got to reset your offense. And it's like, Goran, please save us. Jimmy, please save us. And like, you're not helping. So I think I want him to take more aggression in terms of kind of facing up and attacking the basket, kind of being that Amari Stoudemire, but with passing. And also kind of like develop some sort of jump hook in the post so that you can bully like, that the 6'6" guy that they switch on you as like that's offensive. That's the thing. We haven't seen a lot of that. Teams do that, but I mean, they start switching those small guys onto you, and it's gonna. I think that he and he fans are gonna be for a rude awakening how easy that blows up actions, and partly why a lot of us were critical on the Bucks. They would switch the George Hill, Chris Middleton stuff where Jimmy's picking on poor George Hill. And then they wouldn't switch the Bam stuff, right? And it's like, I feel like that's bad scouting by your team, right? Like if you could switch Chris Middleton onto Bam, I don't see Bam punishing him the way that he should, and you get away with a lot. So I guess that's kind of what I'm looking for, that improvement.
Quick note on how scarred I am as a Knicks fan. When you said you wanted Bam to do the Amari Stoudemire thing, my mind went,
oh my God.
Do you?
Now listen, Amari had like that 2-month period where he was MVP of the league in New York.
Oh yeah, and I will tell anyone who wants to listen to it about it at length. The Knicks looked so good with him for a little bit of time. And
was that more fun than Linsanity? What was more fun?
I think that was because like that felt real for the entirety of it. Like Linsanity was out of nowhere, but you're sitting there thinking like, all right, like this falls apart at some point, right? Whereas like when you have Amari Stoudemire playing like a league MVP, it's like, all right, yeah, no, this is what he should be doing. Like
we got one.
This shocker. Yeah, exactly. We got one.
Do you remember what game ended Linsanity?
It was Melo coming back?
No. They came to play at the AAA. They were coming on their win streak. They came into Miami. I was at that game. That's like the game I always say I was at. I was so excited. That's when Norris Cole and Mario Chalmers took personal offense to Jeremy Lin breathing, and Norris Cole almost died trying to dunk, and he did dunk, but then David, you remember, he fell on his back.
Yeah.
I was at the arena like, someone check on Norris.
Oh God.
Yeah, I think they had just, was it after they had just beaten the Lakers? I don't remember. I remember that was like the big game that season, and it's like, oh, Linsanity's coming into Miami, and then that game was sneaky close, by the way, even though Lin was awful. Melo was like really good that game. But yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't want to torment you as a Knicks fan.
That's okay.
That's like one of my favorite moments, like of like weird Heat lore.
At this point, like being tormented as a Knicks fan is just like what being a Knicks fan is. Like, I know what I'm in at this point. I'm not gonna say I know what I'm getting into because like I got into it, but I know where the Knicks are.
Are you ready for Twilight James Harden being a Knick? Because that's gonna happen. Right, like James Harden on that next max deal. At some point, you're doing that because you know it's true. Like he's born to be a Knick. He's born. It's gonna happen. Like with 3 years left on that next deal, like they're gonna trade for him, and he's gonna have like one All-Star season, and then it's all gonna go downhill. Because that's. I'm surprised it hasn't happened with Westbrook yet. I'm not gonna lie.
I really thought he was gonna get traded to the Knicks, and like the worst part is that part of me was like, yeah, fuck it, let's do it. Like.
That would have been great for you guys. You kidding me? That would have been so fun. The Garden would have been great.
Yeah.
Not now because of COVID, but like, it would have been
No, yeah, like Russ he's a Garden player. Like I do think some of that gets overblown in terms of like the whole world's most famous arena, but like when it's going and when the Garden is actually rocking, it's special. And like Russ
Okay,
is
but
the one
it's
who
like
brings it
low-key a
back.
dump though. Like it's
What's
low-key
up?
a dump.
Yeah, yeah,
So, here in Miami, we had the Orange Bowl, which was a dump. It smelled like
yeah.
urine. It was awful. It was like you could see the plywood breaking on the stands, and you're just like, "Is this safe?" No, but that's ours. That was our
Yeah,
dump.
it's
Like,
our dump.
that's my urine smelling dump. You know all the memories I had in there. 72 Dolphins went there. Yeah, that Brooklyn arena is nice. That one's a nice one.
Oh yeah, the Hard Rock.
No, the Brooklyn arena, the
Brooklyn.
Barclay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. No, that
Oh, I have the biggest love-hate relationship with Hard Rock.
Oh,
really.
tell us.
Yeah, it's like, they tried to do like every event there, and it's like they're doing the tennis tournament there now. They moved the tennis tournament from the beach in Key Biscayne, the Miami Open, to the damn Hard Rock. And okay, fine, they saved tennis in Miami. Cool. That venue sucks. I like drinking champagne on the beach and watching tennis. Okay, like my one thing of the year was in March, I'm gonna get drunk, take the day off of work, and watch Roger Federer on the beach.
Sounds fun.
That got taken away from me.
I'm just from like a watching perspective. Like if it's built to watch a football field, that can't be built to hold tennis.
Oh, yeah, no. So they put the tennis arena down there. They kind of fill with like seats. It's a really, and they close sections. So like they just tarp off with like, decorative. I don't like it. And then
Yeah.
I think the lighting's weird. I think on television it works fine. But like, I think at the end of the day, like they always try to make stuff work for television.
Yeah, they can kinda
As
make
an
it.
in-stadium experience, I didn't like it. I like the campus though. Like the other courts are fine, right? Because like that's not the big thing, but like the grandstand and then the main the main, it's just not. I saw Federer play. Who did he play? Isner or some big American. Oh no, no, that wasn't Ender. It was the Dennis Shapovalov, the Canadian player.
Yeah.
Just a weird experience. I mean, I still got drunk on champagne and I watched Federer and I took the day off for work, but it was
like
weird.
a great day.
Yeah, I think it was fun. It's March in Miami. It's like 70 degrees and you're having fun. But yeah, it's not the beach. I very much enjoyed this tangent. I've been wanting to get off my chest for a while. They'd yell at me on my podcast for that.
Hey, I'm glad you got the opportunity. Dave, did you have anything more here?
Yeah, I think the last thing was just another like wholesome thing to end it on, positive note. Obviously for Heat fans, this last bubble run was, so special. Definitely, especially in this year where I was just in my apartment for the entirety of the NBA playoffs, pretty much like having this to look forward to every night. And growing with this team was like really amazing. So just curious, when you think about this bubble run, this finals run, what is your standout memory that you think you'll always like look back to as like, this is something like I saw?
I have two.
Mm-hmm.
The first one was Jimmy Butler going at Giannis, hitting the floater over him, then yelling out into space, "He can't fucking guard me." And if that's not the most badass thing you've ever seen, that Jimmy Butler from the depths of hell improbably ends up in the situation where he just obliterated the league MVP and defensive player of the year and was confident enough as a 4 seed to yell, "He can't fucking guard me." Lifer. And then after the game, points at Pat Riley in the stands, and then Pat does a little like shimmy and then points back. That's like a movie. Like, you can't write that. That's so cool. I'll never forget that. And then obviously the other is Jimmy versus LeBron, top of the key, goes to the basket, gets fouled, and then kind of rests his arms in his face, leaning over on the kind of those ad boards or whatever, and then Duncan coming over to like give him like the snapshot picture of. I watched Dwayne Wade in 2006. Right, like I watched in a formative year. I was in middle school. I was watching. I was falling in love with sports. Watching Dwayne Wade, do something that I thought was just impossible. Like what he did was incredible. I watched LeBron James at his peak. I saw that Game 6 comeback against the Spurs. I saw that Game 7. I've watched a lot of incredible basketball in town. What Jimmy did was in that pantheon, if not higher. And that snapshot of him carrying everything to the point of just total fucking exhaustion that I felt tired watching him, and that he just went toe to toe with the greatest player who ever lived and won. Come on.
Yeah.
Come on. How do you beat that?
Yeah.
How do you beat that? It's incredible.
It was incredible.
What a fun team. What a great guy. Like, I'm just so happy he's here. I'm so excited for this season. Listen, we watched a lot of Deion Waiters and James Johnson to get to this point. We deserve this.
Yeah. I was definitely one of those people guilty of really thinking Deion had a place on the team after that the 31-11. And I actually think that 30-11, yeah. I actually think James Johnson still has a good place in this league. I just feel like he hasn't been used well since he's left Miami.
I was drinking the Kool-Aid hard that season. Like when they had Justice and James Johnson like guarding LeBron effectively and Hassan swatting Kyrie at the rim. I was at that game and I remembered I wrote a column, and I was like, it was a very self-indulgent Twitter column about being Team Petty and like how this win really validated a lot of feelings, or it was this like ultimate validator, right? And how that game didn't feel like a statement; it felt like a fucking threat. It was like, hey, we're here, we're good, we're coming. I think that was the year that they lost to the Raptors in 7, and like the weirdest series I've ever seen in my life. But like that team, if they don't have injuries, that's a legit like great team.
Yep.
Yeah. Fun times.
And I think Heat fans would like I mean, I've thought about this before. I feel like this team this past season was definitely like sort of like the last 4 or 5 years in the making. Like you saw hints of it. Like when you talked about Ellington, like the things that Spo came up with for Ellington that are now being utilized so like even better with Robinson, or just this sort of like the kumbaya, everyone shares the ball system that has been slowly developed over these last post LeBron years. And then finally, I think we had no horrible injuries and the personnel fit the best it has. And I think, a lot of people think this last year's Heat team like kind of like came out of nowhere, but they were kind of running the same stuff they've been running. They just had like the perfect players for that system now, I think.
Yeah, like they and I actually been wanting to ask Spo about that, but it was kind of tough with the bubble and everything. Like their handoff usage, right? They were the most used handoff team in the league last year, and I think the year before that. And like their handoffs have very like steadily increased every season, despite their pace kind of remaining the same. And I kind of wanted to ask Eric if like was this just in direct correlation to Bam and Kelly? Or is this just how you want to coach from now on? And I think it probably is a little bit of both, right? Because like he's always kind of, and I think Dwayne is a part of that too, because Dwayne's just an elite pick and roll player, right? He's like really crafty, can kind of weave in and out of situations, split that pick and roll, and that requires a dive man. So that's Hassan, that's even Chris Bosh, pick and pop or whatever. Now they really run different stuff, and I think part of it is to maximize guys that just can't create space on their own. Right, like when you do a handoff, it's a really interesting kind of play because you're manufacturing space that didn't exist, and you're also self-containing it. You defend it like a pick and roll, but because of the way you're moving it, because of the action and how set it is, it's just different, right? So I think part of that was him maximizing, the fact that he didn't have an elite ball handler and creator, and I think Bam just becoming this elite passing big man just opened stuff up. So when he got a creator like Jimmy Butler, and they can do handoffs with Bam and Jimmy, and they can also go north-south with that pick and roll stuff and with Goran. I think you see like the versatility there, but it's been really, I 100% agree with you. It's kind of this really steady buildup of maximizing these guys that just maybe, didn't have that much in the tank, and then kind of turning into this, which has been a lot of fun.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think we have anything else. Yeah, you have anything else, Tom?
No, I got nothing else. Thanks for coming on, though, man. I really appreciate
Dude.
it. Before we get out of here, you want to plug your stuff where we can find your work?
Yes, please. Okay, so if you want to hear more of me and my annoying voice, you can follow me at GNAVAS103 on Twitter. Maybe he beat the big thing at MI Heatbeat. Find us on Apple Music, Spotify, all that good stuff. We're also on YouTube. We put the pods on YouTube with video. See us all recorded. The big thing that we're pushing now is our live stream. So we're live streaming every podcast, and we have a post-game show every game. That's on twitch.tv/MI Heatbeat. We're planning a bunch of fun stuff. We're going to launch our Patreon soon. We're hopefully launching our emotes next week. We brought back Heat Twitter president Alf. So Heat fans might know on Twitter who Alf is. We're really happy to have him back. Part of Heat hosting the post-game shows and along with me in the podcast. So please check out the Twitch page, check out us on Instagram and all that stuff. All the same all the same platform. So and get under the tent on what we do. We try to have fun. We try to be analytical. We have a lot of different voices and contributors, and we hope that you guys can enjoy our content this season.
All right, great. Go check them out. Thanks so much for coming on, man.
Appreciate it. Anytime, guys.
Yeah, thanks so much.